All right, hello, hello. Welcome to Wednesday Wisdom Series Live. My name is Ali Taylor. I am the founder and consultant at Wisdom and Wayfinder. This series is all about unless you've discovered the secret to everlasting life, you don't have enough time to learn everything there is about running, growing, and scaling a business on your own. And so that's why I've launched this series where experienced professionals will share their wisdom so that you can save some time and get further ahead than you would on your own. And I am excited to have Kim Groshek here with me today. Kim is a seasoned business professional with over 35 years of experience working with different Fortune 100 companies like Kraft, GE, New York University, UW-Madison. She is also a registered yoga teacher with Yoga Alliance. And in her corporate background, she is known for her work in promoting digital detox and mindfulness, offering a philosophy called Pause Power to help individuals thrive in the digital age. And her mission is to make life easier for people by empowering them through effective time management techniques and restoring balance in their life. Thank you for being here today, Kim.
Thank you for having me, Ali.
Of course, of course. You are, even though your whole thing is about the pause power, you are one of the most productive people, human beings that I have ever met at any time in my life. How do you just give me a quick picture of your day? Like, how do you get started? And how do you make it all happen?
Yeah, so I use a methodology called the time box, which is something that I labeled, but it's very similar to the Pareto method. And I really plan out my year, my weeks, and then my days, and I'm proactively looking at that ahead of time. And my time box is really specific to a 15-minute increment, which is a little bit different than a lot of the methods out there. And it also contains some soft skills in it. And within it, it is that you actually get results when you get done with being in the box. So that being said, when you first come in, you decide what you're going to do in the smallest little bit of information, which is like my podcast, right? It's all about the minor little things that you can really focus on.
Yeah.
And then you can actually accomplish within that 15 minutes so that you see results. But then you have to agree that you're going to do it. That's the big thing, because I think sometimes when we say we're going to drink eight glasses of water a day, for instance, and we don't usually do that, we get up in the morning and then we really didn't say it, but we didn't really agree. So then what happens is we don't really follow through with it.
Yeah.
Right. So within the 15-minute increment, first of all, it gives you a space and time that's small enough that you can then go through the process within the 15 minutes, get the results. But if you don't achieve the results, there's another element called forgiveness, where you look back, like you do for project management, where you do a lessons learned in some respects, but it's more looking back and then saying that you forgive yourself for maybe not, maybe, it's because we're so hard on ourselves, right? So it's like just releasing forgiveness, right? And then it is looking back and learning, because we may have chunked it out too big. So then there's this learning process in it, but it's a very small, and it then helps you get it off your plate, which I call feng shuiing, because and I always say, like, we're living in like Charlie Brown, right? I'm Pigpen with the dirt around me all the time. And it's kind of like, just, okay, so we're going to feng shui, which means, that's what I say, clearing out, get to the focus, get the 2 nuggets done. Now you have 2 nuggets off your plate, right? Feng shuiing, and you're getting focused. And all of a sudden you feel more streamlined, and you'll hear people say when they work with me, I feel streamlined and more focused now.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. But my day is really, I can tell you all the different things that I do during the day, but it's about that design. And then the night before or the day before, depending upon what I'm doing and what piece of the puzzle, I'll look at tomorrow. Like, for instance, when I'm doing conversations, you and I both have a lot of conversations and networking that we do. The plan is to have conversations, but then there's a target in the end. So the day before, I look at what is my, the conversation, but what's the target, which is the results.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know.
I like that, right? Like, I like the fact that you're looking ahead, right? Taking the time first of all, just taking the time the night before to set yourself up for success for tomorrow, but then
Mhm.
planning out those conversations and really what it is that you want the end result to be. I feel like a lot of people just kind of wake up and, first of all, they don't make those agreements about what it is they're going to commit to, what they're going to actually accomplish, and then they spend all day just beating themselves up, like, "Oh crap, I didn't do
Right.
this that I said I was going to do in the morning," and so that takes precious energy away from the rest of the day.
Mhm.
The fact that you've got it set up that one you strategize and you plan your success for the day before, and then what do you want those outcome of those conversations to be. Whereas I feel like most people are just kind of stumbling along and, well, I know I need to call this person, but I don't know why I need to call them. I
Right,
don't know
and
what I need to get out of that conversation.
yeah, and here's the thing, when you just made a big point about the fact that you beat yourself up. So the whole point is I label things, right? I have
Mhm.
written I write chapters in books, collabs and stuff. And there was one chapter that I wrote about gremlins in your head, right?
Oh yeah.
So we can choose, right, as gremlins, because gremlins are always like around us, right? In our
Mm.
stories that we can either let within ourselves or not. And the gremlins show up and they're either positive, that whole positive negative thing that happens.
Yeah.
Those gremlins around us, right? We can walk right through the gremlins.
Mm.
So, first of all, when you say that, we beat ourselves up, those are the gremlins that are happening that are coming at us. But those gremlins wouldn't even happen because you already achieved those results, right?
Yeah.
But if they do, right, you learn to be powerful and walk right through them because gremlins are not powerful at all.
Yeah. Unless you throw water on them and then they just multiply and
Yeah, they melt.
yeah.
They melt. Water melts them.
I know there's a lot of people born after the 80s who are like, "What the hell are you guys talking about?"
Oh, no, they get
Yeah.
it. They get it.
Okay, good.
'Cause I my daughter was born in '89, and she totally gets it.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. Yeah, so I mean, that is so when you take the time to do all of that work, is that how
Mhm.
you got to the process of creating this whole pause powered philosophy? How did
Okay,
how did
so
you get
that's
there?
okay, so first of all, let me go back to why I have these skill sets to begin with, and then we'll go into the pause,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay.
I attribute my methods that I learned from my mother. My mother taught me this when I was very little, and I built on that in all of the things that I've done, and I sharpened my tool set.
Mhm.
So I give her she gave me that gift, and I say that to her all the time because she does in your 80s, you end up beating yourself up, looking back and thinking you didn't do something right. We do this to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell the world that my mother was the one that gave me this gift, one of the gifts. So the second thing is relating to the pause. There's a whole story around this, but this has to do with my dad. Everything is based on family for me. My
Mhm.
legacy is for my daughter. Everything that I do is for my husband, and you name it. But I didn't realize this. I mean, I say it later, but when I was younger, probably about 5 years old, my dad was a computer operator. That's what they called it back then. Back then, there were gigantic rooms of computers, and then in the middle of them, they had these keyboards, and I used to go with my mom and my sisters and my brother to work with my dad, and we'd sit on the keyboards, and we'd type, and we'd see the little punch cards or IBM cards coming through, right? And I was fascinated that my mom, who was a really fast typist, could type fast, number one. And then she could make Christmas trees out of those digits. I don't know how she did it. I
Oh, wow.
just tried and just kind of like the Rubik's Cube. I never could get that to work. Anyway, it turned out that I transitioned into being a computer scientist as a trade. Of course, I got an education degree. I was supposed to be
Yeah.
passionate. I did all kinds of crazy things, but
Oh,
that
wow.
made me who I am today from being able to walk those different walks, those different paths, right? But through my process of all the education I had and the PhDs or whatever you have, right? I came around to it was about 10 years ago when I made a prediction that we were going to be where we are today with the devices driving in the bus driver's seat and we would be in the back seat. I made that prediction. I knew it was happening.
Mm.
But halfway through, I was an early adopter of social media, the first adopter, because I was teaching at the university part-time while I was working, right? And only universities, there's certain universities that could get access to social media. And I knew already that as I was applying the social media methodology in my life, that it could be addictive.
Mm.
And so about 10 years ago, I found myself like it was like you're outside watching yourself do this stuff, and then you come back to subjectively, objectively. So you're always back and forth with yourself. And there were mornings where I'd wake up and I would get on into social media because my family's in there and my
Yeah.
friends that run all these different things. And it was all consuming. And pretty soon, 4 hours later, I'm still in there. So I said, enough is enough. And I disconnected, deactivated my account for 6 months, and I stopped this for a year. I
Yeah.
totally called them and said, done, we're out. And I told my husband, I'll use your phone if people need to call me, they can call me. I mean, I work for these large companies, so I work from home when remote wasn't, it was a not many
What's
misnomer,
that
not
thing?
many
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
did it, right? And so I knew I still could communicate this way, but that was it. And I did that for a whole year, and that became the pause later. I labeled it pause later,
Yeah.
but I then filled it with I love to write. So I would get up in the morning and I would meditate and I would write for 15 minutes. And pretty soon the writing turned into an hour. I started compiling my journals and poetry that I'd write each day into a week thing, and I'd send it out to my friends. Pretty soon I had 200 people wanting it. They did reach out to me and say, I want your email, because I just sent an email. I didn't do the
Yeah.
blog. And that all accumulated. Then I started setting goals to, I could swim, but I got into a master swim because I wanted to do an Ironman, all these
Okay.
extra
Yeah.
things that started to, like, I got more time back. So fast forward until it was only a year and a half ago when I retired from the industry after 35 years. I was asked by Cornell University to apply for the TEDx stage, right? And I'm not going to go out on stage, me, you and I want to learn and do it right. I've
Yeah.
gone on stage before, don't get me wrong. I've spoken on many stages, but TEDx's are different. And so I got into a thought leader program that taught you how to get to that little nugget that we just talked about. You have
Yeah.
to get to an nth degree nugget on TEDx, right? It's very specific. And it took me about 6 months to practice different ideas because 10 million ideas.
Yeah.
And it turned out that the little stories I just shared with you, and then the impact of I just needed to take a pause was what came up. And everyone, it was like what do you call it? A pin drop moment.
Yeah. Or a
Because,
mic drop moment. Yeah.
yeah, because I'm a computer scientist, and here I am working in companies, putting the infrastructure and the people in place. And now I'm saying, stop using it. Now, I'm not saying stop entirely. I'm saying, yes, there's a balance, but what's happening, it's to the extreme now where people are losing their mind, and people are committing suicide. And that's what happened in June when I said that enough is enough. And
Yeah.
that's when I hit the ground and said, I got to get a pause challenge in place. I got to get this stuff moving because we got to pause. And
Yeah.
and
Or it's an imbalance now. We're
right,
at such
right,
an imbalance with the
right.
level of engagement with our technology and the loneliness epidemic and the impact
Mhm.
on, many of the relationships, the parasocial relationships that we have are, being interrupted by this device and social media. And so it's interesting that you saw that coming so early on,
Yeah.
even at the very nascent stages of social media being built before
Yes.
it was even released to the I think before Facebook was even released to the public, you saw that.
I did. In fact, it was funny because we went to Belize around that time, and I actually stopped working for companies for a bit. I said, I'm gonna take a
Mhm.
break because I had my own company. I could decide when to work or not.
Yeah.
And I was talking to this older couple because what I did was I started writing kids books on the little bits of information about
Mm.
empowering kids to get outside the door and play. be creative, whatever, meet a friend in person, even though at that time the devices weren't even really there yet.
Yeah.
But I created these books, and they were like Dr. Seussy. There were 3 of them called Bugs Adventure Series. And then I did Nate the Dragon Stops Bullying, because bullying was like not being addressed.
Yeah.
And it's all about the people and not being conscious of the heart of someone. Like people are just walking all over everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was telling this older couple in Belize that they said, "What are you doing?" You know, and I said, "Well, I want to get this out there because I want to give the kids power back, because no one's I'm not saying parents are doing the best they can, but I think they're relying on teaching the kids through technology so much that they're
Yeah.
missing out on the fact that the kids aren't skinning their knees and getting back up and learning the mistake that they made by falling down because they were doing whatever."
Yeah. Well, the
And
parents are also, they're just sort of passing on the same programming that they got.
right.
A lot of them, grew up with sort of the social media, but also like I think about Ted Turner and starting a whole CNN and 24-hour news channel, and that being something that just dominated our attention span. And then
Mhm.
a different version of it being with the technology that got created in chat rooms. And so it's just, the technology is just exacerbating and speeding up sort of those worst instincts. And so, yeah, the parents are just passing on the same negative programming that they got to their own children.
And it's not just about the parents. So here's the thing. I woke up one day about a week ago, and my husband likes to listen to on Sunday morning news or whatever. And I
Mhm.
heard someone talking on the television. I didn't know. I heard someone talking. And I said, that can't be a person, because
Mm.
they're going, right? And then I went in, and sure enough, it was a person talking on television. So here's the thing. The pause, we're talking so fast because the
Yes.
technology is it's like we're trying to keep up with technology. So we're learning these behaviors and how we speak. And then, so the pause helps us then also, when we speak, slow down so that you and I can communicate to each other and understand each other. And you can catch up to me and I can catch up to you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's, well, now I'm just going to be very conscious of how fast I'm speaking in the rest of this conversation moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And even taking the pause in between, it gets uncomfortable for people. And
Yes.
when we practice the pause, there's a group of 15 of us that were practicing back in October, and there were many people that just couldn't fathom either fitting the pause in because I'm too
Mhm.
busy,
Yep.
or how do I pause? And that's sometimes in fact, I was in an interview yesterday and they're saying, what do you do when you pause? Well, there's so many different things. Pause is just really a way to remind yourself to pause in whatever it is. You can
Yeah.
pause to breathe. You can pause to get away from the chaos, pause to speak, right?
Yeah.
It's all, it's a reminder. It's a reminder word, right?
Yeah. It's the power of being present
Yes.
is really, for me, what I hear the pause being all about. It's like
Mhm.
I can actually be present in this moment. I'm not filling the space or filling any silent spaces with conversation because I'm thinking about what's going on in my head and trying to make a good impression, or is this person, what's going on with this person that they're not saying anything. I think so much of just the social skills that have as a society, it's sort of degraded because people aren't willing to just take that moment to just be with themselves. um,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, even with scrolling on social media, even if you're not doing anything else, you're not with another human being, we think that, well, I'm just going to veg out, I had a really hard day at work, or
Mhm.
I need to, some time to get away. But then you're just sitting on this device and you're not giving your own thoughts, you're not even being present with yourself
Mhm.
inside of that pause. So
Yeah, I mean, I was just watching a video of this old man who is actually mimicking a young child coming home from school
mm,
and the things that the little child did. And the first thing the little child did was came home and went to bed, went to his bed. His
yeah,
bed was a man,
yeah,
and covered up and then took his nap. And then he went and looked, and then oh, I got to go get my snack now. So then he went and got his snack. And this old man, I mean, it's like, and they were making fun of it.
Yeah.
But it's reality.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, when I got home from school, I didn't go to bed when I was a child.
No.
There's a difference, right?
At chores, at homework,
Right. So, I mean, I'm not saying, I'm just saying that it's now it was a normal thing back then to just go home, do the chores, do the homework, go play with the friends outdoors, because we'd always have our neighbor friends we'd play with. And now it has to be a conscious effort because we are doing these different things. That's all it is.
Yeah. I feel like so much of life requires intentionality now, because there's so much that is competing for our time, our attention, I mean, you hear it now, especially on marketing and social media channels, where it's like we live in an intention economy, right? Everything is all about squeezing out every ounce of attention that they can get out of you. So yeah, to pause.
So that's the pause. That's the whole element behind pause. So there's your answer. I mean, truly, that is what it is. And when I'm out on stage or I'm out just talking to an individual, I hope to leave every conversation to say, not to say, but that they are taking pause with them and practicing it.
Yeah.
However it works for them in their lives, to empower them to be free. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are some results that, when you work with, whether it's individual clients or corporate clients, or, in that atmosphere, what are some of the results that people have gotten from implementing your pause method?
Well, there's different types of results. I'll give you one client example for 90 days. There was she basically was in bed, and every time she'd get up, she'd be drinking alcohol. She had a lot of depression going on, right? So I helped her put structures in her day where she had, I think there's some kind of meditation 7-step thing. I can't remember the name of it, that she selected. Everyone's like something different. So she did it every morning, and two 15-minute buckets for herself, because it took 30 minutes. She applied that, and then she started to apply exercise in her life. And then there are all kinds of things that she did. But then the results of it, she was very happy, right? She lost in 90 days, 65 pounds.
Oh, wow.
She got a whole new job totally different job. And she was with a partner of 20 years, living separated, but a partner. They never got married, right? Which is fine. I mean, whatever. She moved in with him and got married. I mean, her whole life just shifted. And it all had to do with,
just
moving forward and focusing and putting the right structures and clearing off that plate and getting streamlined. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And then I'm sorry, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Nope. I'm good.
Yeah. And so for a corporate client, because we know, like, the workplaces, obviously the pandemic was such a massive disruption to how people were used to doing business, how companies were used to sort of operating. And now we have the work from home, and then there's the push for people to come back to the office. So in that regard, how can the power of the pause, make a difference there in terms of company culture and then those results?
Yep. So I have been working with different organizations in specific departments right now. And there is a lot of always on going on, right? Where if you're hybrid, right? Where you're partially in the office and partially out. That's typically a lot of the companies, because it's hard to move all the way back. But many are fully remote, and they never went back to the hybrid. And they you go from meeting to meeting to meeting at the top of the hour, and many of them have now implemented a 15-minute break in between, pause in between
Yeah.
the meetings as a policy, or not a policy because you can't put that kind of policy in place. They actually implement it as a kind of a soft
Hmm.
process for themselves. And the reason why they're doing it too, and they're seeing such benefit, is that they were struggling with not being able to catch up emotionally. There were many times when, you know how it is, chaotic.
Yeah.
And there are times when people are not very happy, or there could be some anger things happening, or anxiety. There's a lot of things going on in these meetings that no one really knows what's going on, right? I mean, I do because I was there. You were there. But they go from this real chaotic meeting to another one without being able to actually settle,
Process and
right? And your body is then taking that all in and then getting sick. That you're seeing a lot of that, or you're seeing people with heart attacks or strokes, or things are happening, right? Especially at the C suites, because they're always feeling like they're on, because there's so many pressures politically, right?
hmm
So that's one of the things that they've been implementing and trying out. It's working really well, as well as some are piloting out the program around the challenge to pause for 5 days once a month, each month.
Say more about that.
So what I do is I actually bring this into companies, and then what they do is promise they actually promise, they have to sign an agreement that they're going to pause for 15 minutes a day. That may be whatever choice they do. They can do 5-minute increments at the top of the hour, or they can just do it. It's really empowering them to make that choice. They do it for 5 days, and then you see this major transformation. A lot of people that have been applying it say they get time back.
Mhm.
It's this time, and it's all about mental time, right?
Yeah.
Because we aren't catching up mentally. So yeah, they run through it. It's like every month they keep on transforming, becoming more connected. And some of them in the schools also are doing this, but they're actually collaborating across department. You know how we have issues with silos.
Oh, yeah.
So they are then able to do some mentorship across the school grades when they do this 5-day challenge. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it just aligns with, it's funny how so much of business, especially with the corporate culture in the last 20 years or so, has tried to circumvent or push past just human biology. Because I
Mhm.
remember reading a study a long time ago that when it comes to task switching, context switching, our brains or our bodies need about 15 minutes in order to. So, like, if you're doing a task and then you get interrupted, it takes you about 15 minutes to get back to the point at which you got interrupted.
Right.
And it's
And that's why it's very critical to do this 15-minute time box,
Mhm.
because I've implemented this in companies, and that's what made one of my successes, by the way. I've been doing this for 35 years,
Yeah.
and there were large companies that would come in that tried to do these transformations, and they'd end up being siloed. So then they'd bring me in, and
Yeah.
I would implement it. And I'd have leaders of about 150 leaders across the globe with gigantic teams. And how I did it was to break it down into these increments to get the agreements, because we all have a short attention span. We can't take big chunks like this and try to get something done in 6 months. You have
Yeah.
to break it down into little pieces, but it wasn't in a plan at all. It was all about human interaction, about talking about what we want, empowering people. Because if you do what you want,
Yeah.
right, that comes from your values and your heart,
Yeah.
and then it drives you to do what you want to do and get it done. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. It's such a needed thing, especially in this time and age where it's so much is just trying to be about being productive and produce
Mhm.
in this society, and like I said before, that attention economy, trying to extract as much attention as possible in order to get as much productivity as possible. It's like such a clash against the way that we're just physically designed and meant to operate.
Right.
Yeah. So a couple questions here. In terms of, so what do you see next? How else do you see this being implemented?
How else do I see this being implemented? Everyone, well, I see that everyone's going to take it and design it the way they want and implement it the way they want. I see
Yeah.
that I already see people applying it, and you're hearing people say, let's take a pause for a moment. You're hearing it on the media.
Yeah.
But there are really intentional things that I do that I think what's next everyone could do. And that is, I actually don't turn on the TV at all.
Yeah.
And if
Turn
it's
off the
on,
news.
yeah, I mean, it really is, because it's like there is a track around that. I mean, it's only one by, it's not unidirectional or whatever. It's one way
Yeah.
bi-directional or whatever. And there are so many different ways to look at things, and we're losing out on all those so many different ways because we're just looking at that one screen. And that's, the phones and everything. I mean, it's
Yeah.
everything, right? That's a screen. It's not three-dimensional, right? And it's more than three-dimensional. The universe is more than three-dimensional.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So we are, as humans, are part of that dimension, and we're losing that. So I'm saying that the power comes from you as an individual, and you have a choice to pause and practice a pause that works for you in different ways, because there's so many different ways you can use it. And that is what's next, is you take it and you run with it and using it the way it works for you in your life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you include that part about like it's a choice, right? Like
Mhm.
being overwhelmed is a choice,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
And it might be a radical choice, especially in this day and age where so much is about hijacking your attention.
mhm.
But yeah, it is. It's a choice to be overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, I am an artist. I don't know
Mhm.
the timing on this. Hopefully I can speak a little more.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We got plenty of time.
I'm an artist, and there was a series that I did where I call it the storm.
Hmm.
And I see myself many times, if you want to call it a tornado, right? I'm walking through that step by step,
Mm,
because I'm intentionally walking and I'm intentionally taking a step by step. As the storm is happening around me, and I have all these paintings around storm and how I look in it,
yeah,
and I don't necessarily know if everyone is doing that. I don't know. I can't say
I,
yes or no,
I don't
but
think they are.
I can say that that's what I do.
Yeah,
And it isn't always easy being in that space. And sometimes I even say I'm in a black hole at times, because there is the emotion part of it that we have to live in. And I think even that we're avoiding. And if we don't settle in our emotions, even just for a second, we're losing out on who we are, because, all of those emotions are a part of experiencing life, right?
yeah,
So that is such a critical element. And when you ask, when you had mentioned, introduced me in the beginning and said that I was probably the most, productive person that you've met, that's how I do it. It's
yeah,
by each little minor step I take, right? And I stop and let my foot position. And if it's that I have to take my shoe off and walk barefoot for a moment, I do, and hold the shoe and be caught intentionally about holding the shoe and then putting the shoe back on and then tying my shoe as I go, so that I'm not losing out on the things that I need to really experience and learn.
hmm,
Because many times we find ourselves in these, always doing the same thing over and over and over again. And part of what I teach and I see in people is I help them go into those spaces that they keep stepping over, that make them keep going like this. So
yeah,
that they no longer do this anymore.
yeah. Instead of
No.
being stuck on a hamster wheel, it's like,
Right.
first of all, recognize that you're on a hamster wheel, and then
Mhm.
make an intentional and conscious choice to do something different, to step
Right.
off of it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe it's not a matter of that you are one of the most productive people, but that comes from the intentionality
Mhm.
and the effectiveness of the actions that you take. Because you're not just doing this swirl of activity of like, oh, let me be busy for the sake of being busy, right?
Right.
Like we were saying with the conversation in terms of people not being comfortable with the silence. It's like, well, let me say something because it's uncomfortable for me to not say something. It's also the same thing in terms of our actions, where it's like,
Mhm.
well, let me do something because it's not comfortable for me to not do something.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. My husband and I are very intentional about going on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we leave our phones at home for the 7 days that we may go on a bike trip along
Oh
the coast
wow.
of Lake Michigan, for instance. And we set that intention up front. And sometimes I don't follow it in the beginning, and he'll pull me aside and said, if you pull that phone out, we are going home. Because we made an agreement. It's
Yeah.
not that he's like that. But what I'm saying is, this is because I do get into it because I'm a computer scientist. This is like a
Mm-hmm.
creative thing. I've done it for years, right? And my first computer was a Xeon. So I was talking to someone else, and I used to do DOS and all those things that people don't do anymore, right?
I don't
But
even think I've heard of that brand before. The oldest one I had was a Gateway.
but yeah, so we do. And then people ask me, how do you do that? Well, we did it when I was growing up. We didn't
Mm,
have to have the phone with us. And here's the thing, you just put your emergency structure in place. My daughter knows, I can call if I need to through this other line, if
mhm.
I need to, or she can reach us if there's an emergency that she needs to, right? So the emergency line, you always set that up
Yeah.
anyway before these were in place. And I even as what I did for after I paused and 10 years ago, I actually didn't while I was pausing that whole year I didn't have the phone. People couldn't believe that I was still working remote and traveling without a phone. And I could. You can.
I know. It's like just boggles their mind.
I know. It's a practice, proactive practice. But again, you hear the process is the same. It's a time box process where we both set we're doing a 7-day trip. We're going to do a bike trip all the way from south of Michigan all the way up.
Oh,
And we are going to not have our phones. And we both agree, yes. And we make each other accountable for the yes, right?
yeah.
Because there are times, right? And we do it. And it's not that's not the only thing we do many things. Like
Yeah.
I went on a bike ride yesterday with my husband, and we were riding, and I did not take my phone because I just didn't.
Hmm.
And halfway through, we saw two people sitting on a bench taking a break, and guess what they're doing?
On their phones.
Sitting in their phones. And it's like you're out in nature, you're looking at Lefty the alligator. Go look at Lefty the alligator, or go look at the eagles up there. We're missing out, right? We're right
Yeah,
next
and
to it.
and what you just said about the one, just the level of relationship that you have with your husband.
Mhm.
Um, I think a lot of people say that that's what they want, but they're not willing to put in the work to actually do that. Like, oh wait, hold on, I gotta be with my partner and not have my phone with me, not have that outside line. It's like,
Mhm.
well, yeah, that's the person that you chose to marry and be in a relationship with. Like, be with that person when you're with that person, and
Mhm.
not the 500 or 800 Facebook friends or Instagram followers that you have. Like, be connected with the person that's in front of you. So it's such an important lesson there. And I would imagine that your relationship with your husband is so much stronger, so much richer, um, and more generous between you two because you have those agreements and you take that time intentionally to spend with one another.
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about transitions in relationships, and it's not always easy. And pausing in your relationship and then having the conversations is very, very critical,
Mhm.
especially during those major times like when you're going to retire, which are really difficult
Oh
times.
yeah.
Empty nest when your kids leave. You are like this because your kids were in between. I don't mean to not I don't know how else to explain it, but your
Yeah.
kids are here. That's what's forming you to keep moving. You each have your own identities in your careers or whatever you're doing. And then all of a sudden your kids are gone. There's this like, oh, now what are we going to do? Well, that takes not, I don't know if it's work, but
Mhm.
what it is the
Takes
conversation.
effort.
It's the,
Effort.
it's the conversations to have to bring you back together. And I will say it's ebbing and flowing,
Yeah.
right? Because it's always like this in human friendship, in human relationships. I've got a lot of different friends that it ebbs and flows. I have a friend who of 40 years that she's doing this way over here and I'm doing this way over here, but we still are always trying to do this. And it's, it is a conscious effort to reach out and just talk and have a conversation. It is about, I do believe it's about communication and articulation. And I think that's missing because the face or social media, whatever we want to call it, right?
Yeah.
There's all different platforms, but that is I can look and I can converse one directional, but if you're talking, I'm going to go have coffee like you and I are talking right now, having coffee or whatever you're drinking. I don't know. I'm drinking coffee. And we're connecting. And you're agreeing and disagreeing, and I'm agreeing and disagreeing. We're having intentional focus and conversation. We're getting to know each other better. And now, it's all about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so many people don't know how to do that without a phone in their hand or without social media. Like I have friends that our primary form of communication is just sending memes and Instagram reels or TikToks back and forth. And, but the best versions of those types of friendships are ones where we've spent time face to face. We've gone through those hard moments, those transitions where we've been able to just connect eye to eye. And I feel like so many people today, it's like, some little thing happens in that relationship and then there's just a break and there's no repairing of that relationship because we've relied on this the whole time.
Well, I think that I think your mind, it's like pivoting, which is part of the shift that I also talk about. And the pivoting doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So when we're talking and coming back to that conversation about, just to relate it to what we're talking about with the time box, is there are times when things don't work the way you think, and there's a pivot that happens, and the pivot is looking back, making a forgiveness effort, and then saying, oh, maybe I don't do that again. I do it different next time. That's right. And in a conversation, it's the same way, the articulation of that. So this morning, my husband and I were talking about, we listened to this morning show, and they were talking about this app because they were saying, well, my wife writes down a list, right?
Yeah.
You don't put it in the right order because when I go to the grocery store, you should put it in the order of the way you go through the grocery store, which was really kind of fun to listen to, right? And my husband was laughing because he's like, yeah, that's how it is. He likes to follow the grocery store thing. And then they mentioned this app that you can put your list in, and then it puts it in the right order, and you can collaborate between those spouses. And I said, oh, I'm going to download that app. And then I thought, but we have a pretty nice system because we talk about it. He knows I like to have my peanut M&Ms.
or while you're shopping.
And he said, you don't even need to put peanut M&Ms in there because I already know that. You see what I'm saying? But if you're missing out on the fun that we have when he'll come to me and say, I'm going to the store. What would you like? Do you need anything? Would you like some? That's a conversation you're missing out on when you put it in an app, right?
Yeah.
So you
make send it through a text or
and you make that decision. And a text is, it's just the whole point that you now lost that mode of communication by having the app, and you no longer now he's in the bedroom and I'm in the kitchen, and now we're not even talking. You lose that. This way he comes to me and says, I'm going to the store. Did you want some peanut M&Ms, or something, whatever it is. Or do you need something? He's talking to me. You see the difference? Yeah. And so that's, I think each time a new app comes out, it's an intentional decision whether to use it. I choose not to use those kind of things with him because I want to have the conversation with him because it's important for me to stay connected to him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's really important in the same way that, like, a marriage is a partnership, the company that you work for, that is a partnership. even if I know that sometimes the imbalance of power is there, but it still is a partnership, right? They're requiring the labor and the effort of the employees and the
Mhm.
corporation. They're expecting the leadership of the management and the direction that they're providing. So there's that partnership there, and I just think what's really powerful about the pause is there's the relationship that we have with ourselves and being intentional about how we connect with ourselves so that we can be intentional in how we connect with others.
Yes. That's big because here's the thing. I coach C-suite executives.
Hmm.
The C-suite executives are typically thinking the employees are doing or wanting to do what they're leading.
Yeah.
Many times there's a disconnect and somewhere along the line. And the thing that I teach C-suite executives specifically is the pause first,
Yeah.
because there are many times they're standing in front of the whole 1,000 people, right? The whole whatever they do, and they aren't taking a pause to hear the audience, to hear their employees,
Mm,
right? And they employees are feeling not heard.
yeah.
So that's critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're just about at the end of our time, so I'd like you to sort of wrap it up. Just what's one piece of wisdom that you'd like to share or impart before we go?
Guess what? I encourage each of you to just practice a pause for at least 15 minutes a day. And then let me know how it goes. I have a newsletter that you can sign up for. Reach out to me, and I'll be glad to connect with you and support you in, if it works for you and your community. And yeah, just practice a pause.
Practice the pause. Love
Mhm.
that. Well, Kim, thank you so much for being here today, taking time out of your day to share your experience and your wisdom with us. So many golden nuggets. It's going to be hard to choose which one to post for Friday. But yeah, this was a great conversation. Thank you for being here. And I will see everyone next week with my next guest.